Good evening, all. As Secretary of the Amritsar branch of the NIC of ICI, welcome all the participants to this very relevant and a virtual webinar on the Information System Audit organized by the Digital Accounting and Insurance Board of ICI. Starting the webinar, I request the Chairman of Amritsar branch of NIC of ICI, CA Ajit Pal Singh Aneja ji, to welcome all the guests, panelists, and the eminent speaker in this webinar. Aneja ji, please proceed. Aneja ji.
Hello. Puneet, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all you present here today. Amritsar branch welcomes CA Chairman ji, Central Council, Shri Dev Sharma ji, Vice Chairman, Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, and our eminent speaker, Shri Hemang Joshi ji and Dr. Vinay Saini ji. I, Ajit Pal Singh Aneja, Chairman Amritsar branch of NIRC of ICI, honored to have you all here today for the webinar on the Information System Audit, Policies and Practice, organized by Digital Accounting and Amritsar branch of ICAI. Information systems are very important for running any business. Earlier, computer systems were used to merely record the business transactions, but now they are actually taking major decisions for the enterprises. The usage into accounting system changed the way the data was stored, retrieved, and controlled. In such a complex scenario, management and business managers are very concerned about information systems. IT auditing adds security, reliability, accuracy to the information systems. Without IT auditing, we would be unable to safely shop on the internet or control our identities. As the history continues, we will continue to see the rise of this and incoming up in the profession. I hope by the end of this seminar, we will be more enlightened about this rapidly blooming industry than before. I encourage you all to actively participate in this webinar. Amritsar branch, you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aneja ji.
Over to you, Mr.
Thank you, Aneja ji. Now it gives me immense pleasure to introduce all the CCM, CA Charanjit Singh Nanda ji, Chairman of the Digital Accounting and Insurance Board of ICI. He is the council member of the 25th Council of the ICI. Now he is the Chairman of Digital Accounting and Insurance Board of ICI, Committee on the Financial Market and the Investor Protection ICI, Committee on the Information Technology of the South Asian Federation of Accountants, that is SAFA. He is also a Vice Chairman, Board of Internal Audit and the Management Accounting ICI. He is already the member of the Central Council of the ICI during the period of 2004 to 2016 and between 2019 to 2022. He is already Chairman of the so many branches at the ICI like Internal Audit Standard Board, Committee on the Management Accounting, and there are so many other committees. He was also the Vice Chairman of the following committees of the ICI, like Public Finance and Government Accounting Committee, Banking Financial Services and Insurance Committee. He's also the member of the Quality Review Board set up by the Government of India. Actually, the list is so long. Now I welcome to CA Charanjit Singh Nanda ji, and now I request him to please give his keynote address for all the participants.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Nanda.
Thank you, sir.
The Chairman of Amritsar branch, CA Ajit Pal Aneja ji. Two of the very revered speakers of the day, Dr. Vinay Kumar Saini and Mr. Hemant Joshi. The support team of technology from DAB, Mr. Amit Gupta, Secretary DAB, and all participants who have come here to go home more enlightened, putting at rest all the doubts that may have crept in their mind over so many years. Ladies and gentlemen, information system audit is a very pertinent and contemporary topic. I would like to tell the public at large that Reserve Bank had invited us on 20th February to Mumbai. The discussion was primarily on information system audit and cybersecurity. To put it in the right earnest, Cyber security and information system audit have assumed glamorous proposition over the years. And we have learned nothing more than understanding that the more our technical impetus is, the better we are placed. Chartered accountants had a humble beginning in 1949. Today have reached unprecedented heights. No consulting assignment is complete without us. Everywhere in technology, we are working in the greatest tandem. And I want to tell you that the chair of SAFA IT committee is also with ICI Chairman DAB. I am the Chairman DAB and Chairman of IT committee of SAFA, comprising 9 countries in our region. So the entire world now acknowledges our supremacy in technology. Technology of a chartered accountant is very deadly. With so many professional opportunities dwindling, it is only technology that will take us to the right parlance. 3 issues why you should know technology. Number 1, when you otherwise do some audits, you have to take some samples. Technology helps you through the entire database. Number 2, there are always issues in finishing the assignment. Technology will always end at the right time. And the third and most important thing, computers don't have wives. They don't have festivals. They work day and night religiously and give best of the results. And those results are error-free. So ladies and gentlemen, my impetus to you, grow like the institute has grown. I'm reminded of a couplet which says, Dete na the jo jawab, unke salam aane lage. Dete na the jo jawab, unke salam aane lage. Waqt badla, तो मेरे नीम के पेड़ पर आम आने लगे. बहुत आम आ गए. It is right time to reap the fruits of our hard work. But be cautious. Hone your technical skills. Create them at the highest level so that you're able to effectively service your clients, stakeholders, along with the regulators and government. I will not stand between you and both speakers, Mr. Doshi and Mr. Saini. So I would withdraw now. The dais goes back to CA Manish Nanda, the Secretary of Amritsar branch. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very happening session. Enjoy it till the last brink. Enjoy, understand, and put it into the right perspective for prosperity of your profession. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nandaji. Now it's the time to start our technical session with our eminent speaker. I will request all the participating members to please share their queries in the chat box to be taken after the individual session by the speaker. Now I would like to present before you CA Hemang Doshi ji, our first deliberator on the topic of the day. CA Hemang Doshi ji is currently partner in an AP Sanjgiri and Company and handling their information system assignment and conducting information system audit for the Bank of Baroda, Federal Bank, Fino Paytech Private Limited, HDB Financial Services, Smartcon Financial Services Private Limited, APAC Financial Services Private Limited. Earlier, he was worked as a vice president in a leading life insurance company and handled IT audits, risk-based process audit, third-party risk management, branch audit, operational risk management. He's also authored for the books which are using for the CISA, CRISC, CISM, DISA, EIS. He's also the founder of the CISAexamstudy.com. His qualification is CA, CISA, DISA, fellow member of the Insurance Institute of India. He's also certified anti-fraud insurance professional. He's also the member of the professional bodies like ISA CA, ICI Insurance Institute of India. Now, I request to our today's eminent speaker to start with his deliberation on the topic.
Thank you, Sri Manish Nandaji, Sri Manish Nandaji. Good evening to all. Good evening, Chiranjit sir, Chairman DAP. Good evening to Vice Chairman, Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. Good evening to the Chairman, Amritsar branch, and good evening to all our fellow colleagues. Today, first of all, thanks to DAP, Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, for giving me this opportunity to interact with all the fellow colleagues over here and to discuss about, one of the most important topic to me, that is information system audit. So thanks a lot, DAP. And with this, I will start my topic. I will share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Great. So, yeah. So with this, we will start today's topic. That is the practical aspect of information system audit. Most of you will be aware about no theoretical aspect of what is the IT audit, what are the system audit, what are the advantages of the system audit, what are the requirements of the system audit. So I will not cover that part, but instead I will speak about practical aspects. So what we do when we go for an information system audit. So that will give you a fair idea that system audit is not that difficult. If you when I will run the checkpoints, you will feel as of now, even without qualification, you will be able to run 50 to 60 checkpoints of your own. So if you can upgrade yourself, if you can upgrade your skills, definitely you can run full checklist without any matter. So that is the objective for today's session. Okay, so before I discuss practical aspect of the system audit that we do in our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day assignment, I would like to discuss certain opportunities in this particular field. So as you must be aware, Reserve Bank of India has a cyber security framework, CSF, cyber security framework. Now there is a lot of consulting work available for the chartered accountants to help the banks to comply with particular CSF, cyber security framework. Further, RBI mandates all the bank to get their systems and processes certified once every year from an independent system auditor. So that is also one area of opportunity. Last year, there was one provision with respect to NPA automation. There was also a requirement about auditing the NPA process, NPA automation process. Further, RBI, which also monitors NBFCs, so there are a lot of regulations with respect to audit of system audit of NBFCs. So as of today, we have around 9,000 and so NBFCs. So there are also huge opportunities for chartered accountant with respect to system audit. IRDAI mandates all the insurance company to get their system audited by an independent auditor, a huge opportunity. Further, it mandates, their internal audit team to get their systems and processes audited from information security perspective. Now, internal audit team of insurance company, they may not be well versed with respect to security aspect. So they generally take help of external experts, and hence you can explore this opportunity also. Then we have one provision of insurance self network platform. Therein also audit is required, audit is mandated by independent third party. Then we have opportunity with respect to investment risk management, wherein systems and processes need to be certified. Okay. Now one aspect is information security management system, that is ISO 27001. Now many organizations want to demonstrate their skills with respect to information security controls, and one of the best way is to get themselves certified as ISO 27001. So ISO, you can also become ISO 27001 lead auditor. A simple exam is there, around 7 to 8 days trainings will be there, and then you can become a certified lead auditor. Many service organization goes for this particular certification because it is required from service perspective. Then we have SEBI mandating all the stockbrokers, intermediaries getting their systems and processes to be audited by independent auditor. We have NABARD, which mandates regional rural bank to get their systems and processes audited from information security perspective. PCI DSS is basically applicable to all the entity who are handling card operations, credit card operations. So that is also one area of opportunity. UIDAI mandates security audit with respect to requesting entity. Okay, so one new opportunity that will have a huge impact in this particular field is Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2022. Now, this bill, as of now, not yet being implemented, but it is expected to be, approved and implemented by this year end. Now, there are certain provisions in this bill which require the data auditors as well as consulting firms to support the data fiduciary and data processor who processes the data. So, also huge opportunity. Even if you say, customers, they are more aware about their privacy protection. So, they are aware what are their rights and what are the regulations. So many organizations will try to ensure that they make 100% compliance. Further, if you see around, there's a high amount of penalty for non-compliance. So companies or the data fiduciary or the data processor will like to spend on the compliance part rather than giving the penalty. So these are the opportunities that I am referring. Okay, so let us discuss some myth about information system auditor. So when we discuss with my chartered accountant friends, they say information system audit I cannot do for the reason I am not a computer engineer, I am not a BTech, I am not a MTech, I am not a BCA, I am not a MCA, so on and so forth. Okay, then they say I don't have knowledge about the programming language. I don't know SQL program. How do I do the information system audit? But please rest assured, these all are not a mandatory requirements. If you know this, then it's well and good. But doing a system audit, these are not the primarily required. So what is required is your interest in technology. That will help you to gain immense knowledge in information system audit. So having said that, let us move to the next slide. Okay. So brief introduction about what is information system. Okay. So when we go for audit, we do audit of information system. Now, what is information system? Primarily, information system consists of 5 domains. One is hardware, second is software, third is data that reside in the software, and fourth and fifth part is process and people. So when we go for the audit, we need to ensure we cover all the 5 elements of particular information system: hardware, software, data, process, and people. So as we know, hardware means computers, routers, switches, and storage devices. On the other hand, processes means your standard operating processes, that define and manage and control the information system. Example of software, as you know, operating systems, server, database, web browsers, etc. Data is something very important to be protected, and then the staff or the employees who are involved in information system processes. So these are the 5 elements for which we do the audit when we do audit of any information system. Having said that, now, so these are the 5, earlier we discussed the 5 elements, but then what we see for this 5 element is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is known as CIA. So when we do audit of software, we check these 3 parts, whether confidentiality is maintained, integrity is maintained, availability is ensured. When we do audit of hardware, similarly, these 3 parts will be there. When we do audit of processes, when we do audit of people, when we do audit of data, all these elements is audited. So basically, when we do audit of a data, we see whether confidentiality is maintained for that particular data, whether the data is having appropriate level of protection to maintain its integrity, and whether this data is available as and when required to the authorized parties. So primarily these three elements were there, and nowadays a fourth element has also been come into the practice, that is non-repudiation. Now, non-repudiation is basically a term which states that a person having entered and transaction cannot say no and cannot deny his accountability from that particular transaction. So it's basically digital signature. So when we do a paper-based contract, parties sign to that contract physical signature. Similarly, in this digital world, there is the digital signature, and hence to ensure that signature is valid and it cannot be repudiated, there is a term that is known as non-repudiation. Okay, so let us now discuss what is confidentiality. In simple terms, confidentiality refers to the protection of sensitive information from unauthorized access or disclosure. So there are various methods that I will discuss in detail. What are the methods that you use to ensure the confidentiality? Some of them, encryption, access controls, and other required security measures. Second part is integrity. So when we say integrity, what we refer is whether data is correct, whether data is complete, and whether data is accurate. Okay, so objective of any audit is CIA: confidentiality, integrity, availability, and within integrity there are three further requirements that are data should be correct, complete, and accurate. So integrity refers to the assurance that information that companies or the senior management are using are not being altered or tampered during storage or transmission. So there are also multiple ways to ensure the integrity. Some of them are, we use cryptographic hash function, we use digital signature, and then other security measures. And last, okay, so basically this is the example of integrity. If you see, this is simple Excel file. I mean, no, these are the control applied. So no one can do changes to this particular data. Password protected cell. So this is the simple example of maintaining the integrity. Okay. So next point is availability. Okay, so apart from confidentiality and integrity, as an information system auditor, we need to ensure that particular data is available as and when required, whether organization have appropriate level of assurance that information is accessible and usable when it is needed. So this is basically achieved through backup system, your business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, maintaining appropriate level of redundancy, and so on. Okay, so these are the primary requirement of information system audit, CIA. Non-repudiation, as we discussed, it refers to the ability to prove that the individual or the system was responsible for a specific transaction. And as I say, digital signature, PKI, and other security measures are required to ensure the non-repudiation. Okay, so to sum this up, whenever we do audit, we check whether particular element of information system is kept confidential, has integrity, is non-repudiable, and is available when needed. So these are the four objectives of information system audit. Okay, so now most of chartered accountants who are new to this particular field and who are doing audit for the first time, I want to make them ensure that you can do audit without any mentor also. So basically, when we do audit in particular steps, it's become very easy. So for that, we have defined certain stepwise approach to audit. So in step 1, generally what we do as an auditor, we ensure whether information security policy is available. So we check whether approvals are in place, whether policy is updated at regular interval, that has been reviewed on annual basis, and so on. Okay, so for this particular step 1, you need not require to have any technological background. Step 2, application level control. So here application is a platform wherein things are processed. So for example, you have SAP, or you have Tele, or maybe you have Zoho, or you have QuickBook, whatever application this have. So then we do the audit of application. So when we do the audit of application in step 2, we see whether that particular application is appropriately categorized. Categorization means whether application is critical, non-critical, or maybe other type of categorization. So this categorization helps the organization to provide funding for security of application. So if, for example, if an organization is having 100 applications, out of that only 20 applications are critical, other 80s are not so critical. So you can have more fund, or you can have more security controls for the 20 securities, or say 20 applications, wherein for other 80 remaining applications, you may have lower level of protection. Okay, so other most important aspect that we see and we feel that it has not been duly implemented is assigning ownership for application. And this is more predominantly observed wherein applications are said by multiple departments. So now no one is owner. Okay, so everyone thinks other will take care. IT will think, okay, I'm not the owner, account is doing their things, so account will be taking care, account will think HR will be taking care, HR will say this and this. So what we ask the organization to assign a dedicated owner for maintaining the control environment of the application. Factor of authentication. There are 3 levels of factor of authentication. One is what you know, other is what you have, and third one is what you are. So this I will discuss in detail when we do application level control in step 2. Then we check what are the user access review being conducted. So for example, for particular application, let us take example Tele. Therein 10 users are there for particular Tele users. Then we check at periodic interval whether these 10 users are relevant as on that any one of them has left, or any one of them has moved to the other department. So it will help us to determine the requirement of access to particular employee as on date. Database level control. Here also we see the categorization, dedicated owner, whether operating system are appropriately updated as and when required. So here also, many times we feel organization or banks or insurance company, they may not have appropriate budget for updating their operating system. Though they will be having enough budget for their other function, maybe marketing, sales, HR. But when it comes to OS, updating operating system, it generally say, "Chalo chalta hai na." I mean, as and when required, we will improve the budget. So this is also an area of concern. Backup arrangement and so on. In step 4, we check about the data center control. So in data center control, what we do, we ask for the audit report, whether data center report is audited, data center is being appropriately audited. So therein in audit report we check what are the risks with respect to environmental controls, what are the risks with respect to security controls, what are the risks with respect to unauthorized access, and so on. Then sometime it may happen data center is outsourced. So in that case, we ask for the service level agreements. Then we ensure that data center should be available at some off-site location. So it should not be at the same risk at the primary data center. So secondary data center should be available at some offsite location. Network device, we see whether dedicated owners are available, whether configuration review is done at periodic interval, and so on. I will discuss all these points in detail when we see the checkpoint. Endpoint device is basically your device which is being used by the users. So laptop, desktop, even some organizations have mobiles, tablets. So these are the endpoint devices. So what we ensure whether they have asset inventory. Again, each endpoint should have dedicated owner. Antivirus is updated or not. Then email controls, we basically check for SPF and DMARC that I will discuss in detail in step 7. This is basically sender policy framework. So this is a control against phishing email and suspicious emails. Whether attachments which are coming outside the organizations are appropriately scanned. Okay, so step 8 is about outsourcing controls. Therein we see whether service level agreement is available, about the periodic audits. Then we do desktop controls, wherein we see various desktop related hardening process. So whether desktop are having appropriate licensed OS, antivirus, whether appropriate user restrictions are there from the viewpoint of unauthorized copy or unauthorized disclosure of the information, whether applications or the web browsers are having latest version. Then in step 10 we check BCP and incident management controls. BCP, business continuity planning, what are their arrangement? What are the arrangements for incident management? How these arrangements are being tested? Step 11 is about user awareness. So when we do user awareness, we check periodic training, background verification, and step 12 is other checkpoints. So if you see from step 1 to step 11 will cover almost 80 to 90% of any audit objectives. So if you're doing audit of PCI DSS, or maybe ISO 27001, cybersecurity framework of RBI, or any other assignment, then in step 12 you need to reconcile the checkpoints and you need to cover what is not being covered in step 1 to step 11. Okay, so this is basically primarily requirement for conducting the audit, and it is being observed when you do audit stepwise, it becomes very easy, and for on this checkpoint around 60 to 70% of the checkpoints you can do of your own, even if you don't have much technical expertise. But obvious technical expertise will help you to enhance your auditing process. But what I want to say, you can start at least. Okay, so now let us assume you got an IT audit assignment. Okay, you need to start the assignment. So what should be your first step? Okay, so it's simple. You ask for the required data from your auditing. Okay, so this is basically checklist that will cover step 1 to step 11 that we discussed earlier. So you need not do anything over here. Only thing is that you need to ask the auditee, organization, bank, insurance company, mutual fund, stockbrokers, whoever it may be, just give this much of information and then you need to evaluate and do some analysis. That's it. Okay, so basic detail basically we obtained. So this will give us no idea about the organization, if they are ISO certified, if they are BCMS certified. So number of application used, what is the information, security team size, what is the name and the qualification of their security officer, and so on. Okay, so this is the basic requirement. Now let us go to step 1. Okay, so you need to ask the organization, your audit organization, to give all the policies they are having with respect to information security. They may be having one comprehensive policy, that is also good. They may have 10 different policies covering different aspects, that is also acceptable. But whatever they have, they need to provide over here. They need to give name of each policy. Who has approved that policy? This is the second aspect that you will evaluate. So sometimes it happens in banks, it has been observed most of the times, policy is approved by CTO or CISO, but RBI mandates policies should be approved by the board. Even this is required in insurance company. So for example, here if you find policies approved by CISO, so this is area of observation, because if it's bank or if it's insurance company, RBI mandates these policies should be approved by board. Okay, so this is required for analysis. Latest version number, so you will get the concurrency control about the particular policy. Latest approval date, from this particular column you will be able to understand whether policies are approved and reviewed on annual basis or not. So if you find earlier date, something maybe, so now in this case this particular policy is not being approved from last 2 or almost 3 years. So that is the area of concern for you. And if you see, even if you will check any information security policy, there it will be written when this policy need to be reviewed. So let me give you one example. I will open a dummy information security policy, so that will help you. Okay, so this is the information security policy, a dummy information security policy, but content is almost same which you find in almost all the information security policy. So here if you see policy revision, so this policy should be reviewed on annual basis. Okay, so requirement is that policy should be reviewed on annual basis, but you found this is not being done from last 3 years. So this is your area of concern and it should be reported. Okay, whether appropriate classification is labeled on the policy. So classification is basically a term which helps you to protect the document. So whether it's a confidential document which should not be made available to public, or whether it's strictly confidential document which should be available only with senior management, or maybe a public document which can be easily made available to anyone who requires that. So every security policy or every document will have a classification. Let us understand this. This is information. So this is classification. You need to understand this, whether classification is being appropriately labeled in all the required documents. Next checkpoint, whether version history of policy is being maintained. So this will help us to understand what changes is being made in each of the versions. Okay, so this is very simple. Step 1, no technical knowledge is required. Anyone can do this. Now, step 2. Step 2 is with respect to application level control. Okay, so you need to ask the audit organization to give list of all the applications they are having in their organization. Now this is area of major concern, because we have seen even banks do not have inventory of their applications. So they may say, okay, this is the 25 or 30 applications they are having, and when we do some cross check or cross audit, we may find 2 to 3 applications that even IT is not aware of. So this is the area of concern that you may find in your organization also. So this is also an area of major concern when inventory is not updated. Okay, so first step is you take all the applications that bank is having. You also ask them to write what is the purpose for each application. Okay, then you ask them to give the who is dedicated owner. Now this is very important requirement. I mean, in absence of owner, this application will be orphan, and then no one knows who is maintaining the control or who is monitoring the risk of that application. Okay, so sometimes it happens na, so for application owner they will write as finance department, so HR department. Now, to be honest, this will not serve the purpose. You know, multiple owner will not serve the purpose. To the extent possible, they should have a dedicated individual having authority over the application as an owner. So in most of the information security policy, they might have defined who should be the application. So for example, this is the dummy information security policy, and let us check whether any provision is there with respect to information security owner. Okay, so here if you see, each asset should have dedicated owner. To the extent possible, ownership should be assigned to the individual having appropriate level of authority, and then asset owner is responsible for managing the risk. Okay. Okay, so next checkpoint is application categorization. You need to ask your auditing organization to provide what kind of categorization is there for each application. Okay, so they may say it's critical. Okay, then you ask them what is the basis of criticality. Okay, so then they will say, okay, for so and so reason this is considered as critical. Then you ask them what are the documented evidence to prove that this is a critical, or these are the requirements that need to be considered for critical. So you can also check in information security policy. Okay, so here now some organization may consider criticality on the basis of application where recovery time objective is less than equal to 2 days. Database containing restricted confidential data is defined in clause 10. Any application data written critical. So you need to also further cross verify whether these requirements are actually being evaluated at the time of defining the criticality. Okay. Now factor of authentication. So as I said earlier, there are three factors of authentication. First one, what do you know? So you know your password, okay? So that is first factor of authentication. Second is what you have. So OTP is something that you get on your mobile phone. So that is what you have, or OTP generator. Third one is what you are. So what you are means your biometric features, your retina scan, or maybe fingerprint, voice recognition. This is part of your body feature. That is what you are. So these are the three factors of authentication. So before moving forward, let us discuss about three factors of authentication. Okay. So generally, there are three authentication factors that can be used for granting the access. Something you know, a password, PIN, or some other personal information. Something you have, and something you are. So for example, now an organization is required to have two-factor of authentication. So basically IRDA mandates for critical application, they need to have two-factor authentication. Okay, even RBI mandates for the banking related application, they need to have two-factor of authentication. Now let us check whether, so for example, if you consider password and PIN, so password is something you know, and PIN is also something you know. So this is only a single factor of authentication. Password and token. So password is something you know, token is something you have. So this we can consider as two-factor. Now fingerprint and voice recognition. Fingerprint is something you are. Voice recognition is also something you are. So this is also a single factor. Iris scan and access card. Iris scan is basically something you are, and access card is something you have. So this is a two-factor. PAMA, password, access card, and fingerprint. This is something you know, something you have, and something you have. So these are three factors. Okay, so these are basically how passwords authentication factor works. Okay, so when we do audit, sorry, just okay, so when we do audit, we check what are the requirements for factor of authentication, and then we cross verify whether actually that is being implemented. Now, next checkpoint is whether password complexity is applied in the application. Password complexity means, we do have certain rules, requirement of capital letter, requirement of special character, requirement of some minimum length of the password. So this, how do we check? Basically, it's not that technical. First, we will see what are the requirements mentioned in the information security policy. Okay, so again, this is basically, we consider as our basic checkpoint or basic book on the basis of what we do audit. So password complexity, okay, we will check first here. Following password complexity should be defined for each application and database. Okay, so this is the required. Now we will take any application on sample basis, for example, application A, and we will ask the system administrator, please show us the backend of the application to ensure that whether these particular checkpoints are appropriately deployed in this system. So what he will do, he will show us certain, I will just give you an example now, generally what we see at the background. So basically this is a screenshot of an application, backend of the application, where how policies are being deployed. So basically they are saying must contain lower and upper letter likely. So this is being enabled. This is being enabled. Length of minimum password between 8 to 25. So they are saying it should be 8. Force reset password on first login, it is not being enabled. So we cross check this with the requirement in information security policy. Okay, so we are not going to take the application in our hand and try to find this. Only thing is that we will ask the system administrator to help us to find the backend and where this parameter has been deployed. Okay, now VAPT is basically vulnerability assessment and pen testing report. There can be requirement where each application need to be tested for VAPT every year, or maybe maybe 6 months, or maybe twice. Every quarterly, whatever it may be. So first thing, what we need to find is the requirement. So what is the requirement for VAPT testing? So first let us find. Okay, Here, all the IT should be tested on below different frequencies. So critical application should be tested minimum once every year. Okay. So what we will do now, see what is the criticality of this particular application. Okay, so if it is critical, we will check what is the date of latest VAPT report. So date may be, for example, let us consider 3.2. So they didn't did any VAPT testing after 2020, but requirement is that that should be done every year. So that is your audit observation. Okay, so you should ensure VAPT is done on annually. Okay, further, number of open observation is on date. So once VAPT has been conducted, auditor issues a report wherein some risks are being defined or highlighted. Now, it is the responsibility of the organization to mitigate those risks within a certain predefined timeline. So what we check whether these risks are being mitigated on the basis of closure report submitted by the compliance auditor. So here also we go to information security policy. We check what are the timelines. So here, if you see here, timelines have been given. Remediation timeline for vulnerability is mentioned in the below table. So if risk is critical, category is critical, it should be mitigated in 7 days. For high, 30 days. For medium, 45. For low, 60 days. Okay, so what we do, how many open observations are there, and then we check the timelines, and if it's complied with this particular requirement, then it's well and good. If not, then it will be the area of audit observation. Okay. Date of latest source code review is also one requirement. So similar kind of audit process we will follow here. Again, we will check number of open observation as on date for source code review. Date of latest user access review. So as I discussed earlier, user access review is basically review of the active user as on particular date. This review need to be conducted by the application owner. Okay, so let us first check what are the requirements in information security policy. Okay, so now policy requires that application owner is responsible to ensure that all accessibility current and appropriate user access review need to be conducted on annual basis as per below format. So this is the basically format, and then application owner need to certify that they have removed access of all the resigned transferred employees. So we generally check for this report whether it's available or not. And sometimes we do cross verification from the users list available or extracted from the application. Okay, so from this date we will able to make out whether they are doing or whether they are following the as per information security policy. So this is step 2 about the application control. Now there are many more such controls with respect to application, but as a beginner, I mean generally if we consider ourselves to this checkpoint, then gradually we will be able to gain the confidence. So these other checkpoint you can add according to the risk environment and the control requirements of the auditing organization. Step 3 is about database control. Okay, so here also we ask the auditing organization to view all the data. What are the database server they are having? What is the purpose of each database? Again, a dedicated owner is required. Here also categorization, as we discussed in application control. Then we will check for operating system. Now here, once we have operating system, we first just check whether this particular OS is still being supported by the manufacturer. Or sometimes it may happen there is no support. OS is end of support, and still organization are using that operating system for maybe some reason. So that we need to highlight in audit report. So database server location and backup location is required to ensure that both are placed at different locations. So both should not be subject to same level of risk. So sometimes we observe organization will have then primary server location and backup server location in same building. So that is not a good practice. Okay, next checkpoint is whether access granted through privilege identification management or privilege access management software. So generally, most of the organization will have the database control through PIM software. So PIM software is basically a software that will monitor the login of users who are having a higher level of privileges. So this particular software will monitor their timings, will monitor their activities, they monitor and log their processes. So it will audit of all the activities of that privileged user. So that we will check. Generally, this is also a simple checkpoint. What we do, we generally ask them total how many number of data server is there. Then we will see what kind of PIM software they are using, and then we will ask them to please let us know how many servers are integrated with this particular PIM software. So this is CyberArk is one of the mostly used PIM software. So therein we will cross check this server with the server data that organization has given to us. Next checkpoint is whether secure configuration details are documented. So this is what we do at the time of doing the audit. A simple documentation with respect to appropriate approvals and configuration details. So now many regulators wants the banks or insurance company to get their password encrypted, at least user password encrypted in the database. Okay, so we will ask the organization whether it is done or not. If not, then it's audit observation. If yes, then we will cross check, and then we will ask the administrator to show the password from the backend database. So it will look like this. You will not as easily make out that they are the password. So you cannot read the password. So if you see, these are the encrypted hash. Okay, so no one, even database administrator, will not able to read the password. So again, which algorithm is used to encrypt and has the password? So we'll ask the algorithm, and then we will check whether this algorithm is not being compromised, and we will cross check this with the what is being deployed in the database. So again, it will look like this. For example, algorithm, I will show you a screenshot. So if you see here, it's showing algorithm DDS. So what we will do, we will cross check with the requirement and information security policy. So if you see, so acceptable algorithm for hashing is this is algorithm for encryption is. So we will check whether only these algorithms are being applied in database. Sorry. Then date of latest backward restoration test. So first thing is we will check what is the requirement. So this is the requirement for database restoration test. Restoration test for all the critical database should be conducted at least on half-yearly basis. Restoration test for all the important database should be conducted at least on annual basis. Okay, so then we will check the date and we will cross tally whether it's been complied or not. And on sample basis, we will ask for the restoration report, and we will check whether if any observations are there or if any negative observations are there, how they have mitigated those observations. So this is with respect to database control. Again, these are the basic checkpoint. You can add or remove the checkpoint considering the risk environment and the control requirements of your auditee organization. Moving to step 4. So when we do audit of data centers, generally we ask for this particular data. What is the location? Whether it's internal or cloud-based. In case of cloud, whether appropriate service level agreement is available. Also, whether data center is audited at periodic interval. And further, same logic, if audited, what are the audit observations, how they have been closed, and what is the remedial time. Again, here also you need to add more checkpoint considering your risk and your control environment. Okay, now let us move to step 5. So step 5 is basically about network devices. So network devices basically, firewall or maybe switch, router, or any other device that help us to connect to internet. Okay, so again, each device need to have a device owner. In absence of owner, that particular device may not be appropriately monitored or controlled. So we don't know whether risk has been appropriately mitigated in absence of owner. So what we suggest, each organization need to have a dedicated owner for each network device. And then this device need to be reviewed for the configuration. So maybe 6 monthly or yearly, the application owner need to certify that he has reviewed the configuration and the configuration is in compliance with secured configuration requirements of the organization. So there will be a standard process or standard report for that. So we check that particular report on sample basis. Here also, other checkpoint can be defined on the basis of risk environment of the organization which you are auditing. Okay, so now this is operating system. Again, please ask the auditee to give name of all the device, who is the device owner, what is the operating system. Okay, now here what we do. So for example, when they say operating system is Windows 7. We know Windows 7 has already reached end of support. So there is no support and there is no new security patches available for Windows 7. So this is our audit observation. When you are new to this particular field, you can Google out. So you will get to know just a minute, I will check. End of support life for Windows 7. So if you see, you can easily get this information. Windows support ended on January 14, 2020. So now this is your area of observation. Okay. Now the thing is that now they are saying it's actually Windows 7, but then how do you verify what is actually being deployed? So in sample basis, you may check some computer. This is very, some technicality is required, not that tough. Eventually, you will be able to find out how to do it. You go to the command prompt. You write window version. So now from here, you can cross check whether it's Windows 10, Windows 7, whatever they are saying is correct or not. That you can do on sample basis. And gradually, these checkpoints you will be able to understand once you start auditing. Okay. Similarly, whether configured with antivirus, anti-malware solution. So this is also, not a major job. This can be easily visible by checking the user computer. What kind of antivirus is installed, when the signatures were updated for that particular antivirus or anti-malware solution. So these are the checkpoints when you do audit of endpoint device. Okay. Next step is about email control. So first thing is that what we do is we ask the organization to give all their domain over here. Okay, so maybe for example you're auditing Google. Okay, so they may be giving google.com, google.co.in, and so on. So you ask for all this particular field, and then first checkpoint is you need to ensure whether SPF is enabled or not. Now this is also, though a term is technical, audit checkpoint or audit process is very simple. You will be getting, many such, this can be verified through public domain. So you go to the Google, okay, and you write Center Policy Framework, SPF checker, record checker. So you will get so many websites from it. You can verify whether this particular site or this particular domain is being complied or not. Okay, so you need to just write the name of the domain, and then you will get the result. Whether so for com here it is not being mentioned. So accordingly, you will get whether this particular okay. So you can verify this from n number of platforms. So this is a publicly available information. So basically, first let us understand what is sender policy framework. Sender policy framework is implemented to ensure your email is protected from any phishing or any other malicious attack. So once if SPF is enabled, and if your email is sent through some unauthorized server, a receiver will get a warning message stating that this particular server is not authorized, and then DMARC will ask to control the setting what to do with respect to such unauthorized email, whether to move to the junk folder or whether to move to the directly delete it, or what to do with respect to this kind of email. Second thing is that you can easily verify whether attachments are scanned by antivirus. So basically what you do, you go to the system administrator, ask him to open the AV dashboard, and then there are various parameters are there. So you just try to find out about scanning download. So here email antivirus scan. So this is being on. So you need to verify on the basis of antivirus dashboard. Okay. Other thing is whether email sending is blocked for personal accounts such as Gmail and Yahoo. So before checking this checkpoint, you need to first understand what is the requirement of information security policy. So as per policy, whether this is allowed or not. If not, then you can test check on the basis of do some email from a user to your personal ID or Gmail ID and see whether it's being blocked or you are receiving such emails. Okay, other checkpoint is outsourcing control, that is step 9. So here also we will ask for all the details. We will ask for the service provider details, whom organization or customer data is shared, or they are having access to the network of the organization, or access to the systems of the organization, or maybe that service provider is critical from business continuity perspective. Okay, so first we'll ask the organization to give all the details. We will have what are the nature of activity that is being outsourced. Then we will see whether agreement are in place, and then agreement are valid, not expired. Okay, then certain checkpoints whether right to audit clause is included in the service level agreement, whether data confidentiality clause is included in the service level agreement. So these are the simple checkpoints that anyone can do. We need not have technical expertise to do this audit. Okay, so some organizations may require and SLA to be vetted by information security team before it is being executed. So whether this is being done and records are available or not. Date of latest information security or audit service provider. Okay, so this is also one of the important control, because whenever a service provider uses our data, or maybe they have access to our system or access to our network, they need to be audited at least on annual basis. So what we do, we ask for the audit report, then we check the audit observations, we see the closure status, and then we see whether closure status are within the acceptable range. So this is about step 8. Step 9 is about various control with respect to desktop hardening. So here we'll see what are the operating systems whom it is being licensed to, whether laptop or desktop is being already activated. So here you need to have certain amount of technical expertise, because you need to do audit of the desktop. So for you need to know the command prompts, you need to know PowerShell, or you need to have understanding of operating system, so from where you can find what. But gradually, eventually, once you start auditing, you will be able to have a good amount of exposure. Maximum password edge is net account. So for example, here, let us understand this. We saw password requirement, complexity. Now, information security policy is saying that minimum password edge should be 0, 90. So this is the requirement of information security policy for Windows login. Okay. Now let us check whether actually this has been deployed or not. So again, you need to go to CMD. So this is what was deployed, and this is what is required. So you do cross check. Okay. 0, 98, no. So in case of deviation, you need to report. Password history is maintained, minimum password length. User should not have any administrator related right. Clock synchronized with the time server. Date and time restrictions. With the screensaver is enabled. So for this, you will take some time to get the hands-on, but once you do 1, 2, 3 audit, you will be comfortable for doing this practical audits. Windows page update. So basically, you need to go to Windows. Okay, but whenever you do this audit, please make sure you should not operate user laptop. It should be operated by system administrator only. So only you should witness the process. So from here, you will get page updation. Okay, then you can ask the system administrator what is their process of updating the patches. So, for example, many organizations may not immediately update the patch. They wait for maybe 15 days or 20 days before applying the patch. So first you need to ask the system administrator what is their process, and then you need to try to cross verify whether that is being followed or not. Okay, pre-saved password. So this is also one requirement. You can go to any Google Chrome settings. So here, if you see in my computer, passwords are pre-saved, so it should not be there. This offer to save password should be, this is disabled, and user should not be able to do these changes. Actually, this should be controlled through group policy, and hence it should be appropriately protected. Okay, so these are the audit observations. For personal laptop, for personal computer, it is okay, but for organization's computer, password should not be shared in browsers. Okay, now this is also availability of latest Chrome browser. So you check the browser availability of the user system. So this is the version. Now you can cross verify this in Google. What is the latest Google Chrome version? If it's matching, then it's good. If it's not, then there is some issue that need to be investigated and further reported. Similarly, you can do this for Microsoft Edge. Okay, whether only approved software or applications are installed. So here, three-step process is there. Step number one is you ask the list of all the approved software from the auditee. Okay, so they will give you A, B, C, D is approved software. There should not be any software other than this. Okay, so this list is ready with you. Then you go to the sample users, and in their laptop try to find out the programs which have been installed. So this is basically programs that are available in the user's laptop. So you cross verify this program with the approved one. Which are not approved and installed, they are area of concern and need to be reported. Okay, whether users are restricted to install the application. So here what you can do, you ask a user to log in from his ID, okay, and try to download some executable file from a well-known source, and then try to attempt to install that particular executable file. If it's done from the user's ID, then it is an area of concern, because users should not be allowed to install any application. For installation, administration password is must. Whether USB is disabled, this is a simple check. You can have your own USB device and try to log into the user computer. Then there are certain requirements, whether Google Drive is disabled, VPN macros are disabled. VPN macros are disabled for MS Word. VPN macros are basically common source of executing the malicious files. So basically, most of the organization asks this user to get this disabled. In fact, they disable through group policy only. PowerShell disabled, window run. So these are some checkpoints that will help you to understand hardening process or hardening environment of the laptop or the computers of the users. Okay. Now again, some checkpoints with respect to BCP and incident management, whether organization have approved business continuity plan, whether BCP is reviewed at periodic interval, whether alternate site is reasonable distance away from the main site, and both sides should not be subject to same risk. Whether PCB testing is conducted at periodic interval. So testing is also important, and the result of testing is being evaluated and appropriately addressed. Whether results okay, this we discussed. Whether organization is having approved incident management plan, and this plan should be reviewed and updated at periodic interval. Okay, so then you ask your organization auditee to provide name of all the employees. So if it's not possible to give name of all the employees, at least ask them to give name of the employees who has joined maybe last year or last month. So you will have sufficient data to do analysis. Then you ask them whether they have attended any information security training. Okay, if attended, then what are the evidence? Maybe attendance, or maybe email invite, or maybe any other documentation to prove that employee has attended the information security policy. And you need not do this on for all the employees, only on sample basis you can do this. Okay, so for same set of employees, you also ask for the background verification report. First, you understand the process, whether background verification is mandatory for all the employees. If not, why not? And then you need to cross-tally with the regulator. So RBI says, yes, it is mandatory. If IRDS says, yes, it is mandatory, then why they are not doing, it is the area of concern. And if they are doing, then ask for the report on sample basis and see whether it's being complied. So with this 11 step, you'd be able to do audit thoroughly. But then step number 12 is required when your objective of audit is, maybe ISO 27001, or maybe SAMA regulations, or HIPAA regulations. So then you need to reconcile the regulations with respect to this 1 to step 11, and you need to cover which points are not already covered. So with this step 12, you'll be able to complete an audit checkpoint in a much effective and efficient manner. Okay, so with this, I think I covered all the 12 steps and almost 723. So I will stop here. So we can, have some question answer session. Over to Manishji. You're not audible.
Thank you, Himakji. It was really such a wonderful deliberation. Now there are one or two queries from the members. One of the query from the Chennai, is there any empanelment body for the allotment of information system audit for the share broker, etc.?
So generally they required, SEBI requires a certain empaneled firm. So you need to get your firm empaneled with a certain. There is a process. They have their own website wherein process is being defined. So once your firm is certain empaneled, chances of getting audit improves. So even IRDA mandates audit from a certain empaneled firm. RBI recommends audit from certain empaneled firm.
Okay. There is one more query from the Chennai. Can a statutory auditor do the system audit?
So, for example, when you do a statutory audit, in long form audit report, there is a part of information system and information technology part. So therein, as a statutory auditor, you need to validate the information security requirement of the organization.
Okay. Sir, there's one more, not exactly a query. Harshita Garg from the Moga, she's asking, so the PPT is very amazing. If you could please share the PPT.
Sure, we will definitely do it.
Okay,
or
sir.
I will do one thing. I will give my email ID. So
okay.
Those who want can write to me. Can I share my screen email ID?
Yeah, I will share it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it. Okay, thank you so much, Hemangji. It was really such a wonderful deliberation on the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for our next speaker for the day. He's a tech professional, Dr. Vinay Kumar Saini ji. Dr. Vinay Kumar Saini has more than 18 years of experience in the software development, information security, training, research, and the consultancy. He holds a BTech in the computer science and engineering and MTech in the information technology and PhD in the computer science and engineering in blockchain. Really, it's wonderful. He has qualified CISA exam and is Wipro and Infosys certified faculty. He has published the many research papers in the journals and proceeding of the international and the national conferences. He has delivered many guest lectures on the various information technology, risk management, IT security, and IS auditing related concept in the leading institutions like CA Sri Lanka, ICI, IEI, TIPS, and many more across India and abroad. Now, I request our speaker, Dr. Vinay J, to start his deliberation on the topic.
Okay, thank you, Manish. Thank you very much. Before I proceed for today's discussion, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to ICI for this initiative and the opportunity they have given me. I want to convey my sincere thanks to Nanda sir, Central Council member and Chairman DAB, Vice Chairman Daya sir, and Chairman Amritsar branch of ICI, and the whole organizing committee, Amit sir, for coordinating this event. He's the secretary in DAB. So first of all, I must convey my gratitude to Hemang Doshi sir for explaining in detail the step-by-step process of auditing and covering the micro things, that what are the various components of information system and how we should approach and test them, what are the various different kind of controls involved. Such an exhaustive checklist based step-by-step discussion in such a short time, it's really a commendable task. Thank you, Hemant sir, for your deliberation. And now task is to me to conclude the discussion. I would rather take a little macro view perspective, and perhaps I would try to make the discussion a little lighter so that we can have quick takeaways on how we can really take all this knowledge into practice. As mentioned by Nanda sir, well, we have came a long way. Now we have to carry belief in ourselves that yes, we can explore these IT-based opportunities and we can really extend our portfolio for information system auditing and related compliance auditing practices. So I'll take my discussion forward from where Hemang Doshi sir has left us. And now, before I proceed, let me quickly share my screen. Just a second. I hope the screen is visible. Can I have confirmation, Manish? Okay. Thank you very much. So good evening to everyone and welcome to discussion on audit and cybersecurity framework. We saw in the previous discussion that auditing is something which is very critical for any organization, and we talk about any industry, assurance practices from various stakeholders perspective, right? We have governing bodies, we have people who are guiding and taking the business to the growth and the development. Then we have people who are managing the operations, and then we have operational people, like operational people who are executing the task operations on a daily basis, right? So there are so many stakeholders, and if you want to have assurance, there are so many components. And as highlighted by Hemant sir, that there are various components in information system, like your hardware, software, right? Your databases, your security practices. Then you have people and related processes are there. So we need to have standardized operations, and we need to have checklist for assessing whether those policies which have been laid out by the governing bodies and other related regulatory bodies are being followed effectively, right? But if we see, audit, if you talk about information system audit, it has a huge scope, right? And there are so many components, so many areas. If you talk about some of the operations, you have asset management, then you have performance, then you have compliances, then you have security, then you have what you call system development, then you have business continuity, like risk assessment, and many more areas are there, right? And then when you talk about industries, industry to industry practices vary. So in a way, we are in a very big, what do you call, a pool where we need to understand why we are doing all this thing and what are the best practices, right? Of course, for a specific industry, for a specific organization, we need to have a specific set of practices. But then we saw during discussion of Hemang sir, that what are the various different kind of controls in different areas, right? Like database, like hardware, like software, operating system, and many more. But from a bird eye view, I think if we want to understand why we are doing it, why it is necessary, and why we are talking about cybersecurity and various other things, why it is a buzz nowadays, and why every country is worried about cyber threats, cyber attacks, I think we need to have this perspective as well. And then this will give us an idea on what's the next step, right? How we should proceed further, right? So with these things, let's start our discussion. First of all, I will take you to a slide which has a very generic kind of a meaning. If you can't measure something, you can't analyze or control it. And I hope most of you would agree with this statement, that if you cannot measure something, it's very hard to understand how we are doing, how we are operating, what's the current state of our business. And we cannot really analyze anything. And if we can't analyze, I'm quite sure we have no clue on how to control the system, right? And how to get the system back on track. So auditing heavily depends on the measurement, right? If we don't have the data, if we don't have the observations, records, documentation measured and prepared properly, I think auditing can be a nightmare, right? It could be a big challenge. But now, considering the kind of setup we are in, we are having IT-based systems all around us, right? Information systems are there. Then we have all kind of hardware, software, and security practices which are delivering us all different kind of services. It means that the data that we are looking for assessment, assurance, verification, validation, all data is available in most of the time in digital format. So what is required is a bit of understanding of right tools so that we can capture the complete data and we can give our findings and observations. And if you recall, Nanda sir mentioned, gone are the days when we talk about samples. Now with IT and digital data, we can have complete coverage of the data set or the population, and we can give precise observations, right? And perhaps the complete coverage of data can be considered for highlighting the observations. And you can give exact evidence with substantive details that this is why it happened, and this is the magnitude of the loss, and these are our recommendations. But the fundamental thing is, if we don't have the data, we cannot really go anywhere. So measurement is the key. So as a consultant, as an auditor, our first priority should be focusing on measuring things. If we get the data, only then we can proceed further, right? Sorry. So with this, we'll start. This is the fundamental philosophy that we should follow in our life as a professional, as an auditor. Now, outline of our discussion today would be purpose of audit, why we are doing audit, right? And what all is a part of IS audit? What are the different dimensions? What are the different perspectives that we should look into while we are doing audit? And if you look at all those perspectives, you will see that there are a lot of professional opportunities available. Then we'll talk about why cybersecurity framework and why it is one of the most talk about topic in today's auditing landscape. Like when you talk about IS audit in any group or any network or any of your groups, most of the time the people would be talking about security audits or compliance audits, and compliance also related to security. So it means that this is one area which is really gaining huge focus. And of course, the reason is very evident. Data is your what? the most valuable asset in the organization. And if we don't protect that, if we don't safeguard that, it's going to be a disaster for the organization, right? So if you are looking for assurance, I think that thing comes in the top list, or perhaps the top priority list, right? So we'll talk about why cybersecurity framework is required, and then we'll talk about what are the best practices available, right? When we talk about cybersecurity framework, there are a lot of misconceptions, right? But let me tell you one thing, there can be so many practices. Every individual organization may have their own set of practices, right? But the point is, can we say that we have covered everything? That's where the risk is, right? So that's why we need some best practices, some kind of standards which are followed and reviewed by majority of the people worldwide, so that we can have some benchmark where we can refer to, where we can look up to, and can customize or can update our security practices, right? So that's the reason why best practices are talked about, why we talk about standards. So we'll quickly talk about three, that is NIST by National Institute of Standards and Technology, and then ISO, International Organization for Standardization. They're one of the leaders in developing standards. And finally, we'll talk about Center for Information Security, Internet Security, and we'll talk about their framework practices. And finally, I'll give you a quick implementation guide on how you can implement one of these, like NIST, which is perhaps the most widely used standard and quite popular also, right? So I'll quickly show you how you can implement that in any organization. But having said that, it's not the end of the list. You might have heard about many compliances and security standard practices, like you might have heard about COBIT, you might have heard about PCI DSS, COSO framework, and many more. So the point is, all these frameworks are talking about some kind of practices where you can implement certain operations of the organization, be it governance, be it management, be it security, be it some compliance like business continuity or internal controls. So the point is, all these frameworks are guiding us on how to have proper and smooth operations in the organization. Out of all these, we'll talk about these three quickly, right? And out of these three, I'll highlight and explain how we can implement that in detail, like from practical perspective, right? How we can implement NIST, right? So that's the broader outline. I hope this will give you some kind of excitement on what we are going to do. So, purpose of audit, why we are doing audit, right? Perhaps there can be so many different perspectives. If you talk about the auditee or the owners of the business, they may have a different kind of perspective. If you talk about auditor, they may have different perspective. If you talk about regulatory bodies who are saying that it is mandatory to go for auditing and assurance practices, they may have a different perspective, right? And then there are many other agencies all around us who are associated with directly or indirectly with auditing operations. Okay. Now, the point is why we are doing it, because we need to have assurance, right? We need to have assessment on how effective, how good our operations are, like deliver 360 feedback on business process operations. When we are saying 360 means we have to cover the whole sphere. Whole sphere means whole circle. Whole circle means whatever comes within the, perspective of an enterprise or any organization, right? To a certain quality of financial statements. When we talk about financial accounting, then financial auditing or forensic accounting, all these practices are focusing on the financial aspect. Whether the recording of financial operations like transactions and other related records are correct, they have integrity maintained, they are used in a proper way, their confidentiality and safeguarding is being maintained or not, that again is a crucial part. And we all know that what intellectual property is. Every business has got certain top secret information about their operations, about their like formulas of manufacturing or whatever you call it, right? So the point is that there are certain critical, sensitive elements which are to be safeguarded and protected, and its usage has to be tested in terms of quality and security. Then to develop a practice of having audit trail of each transaction, to have a check on whatever is happening in the organization. It's again a very critical. So that's why we need to have an audit practice in place, so that we have a view and monitoring on every aspect of the organization. Then technology is evolving, element of every system. So with change in technologies, new and new technologies are coming up, right? And you might have heard about terms like blockchain, you might have heard about IoT, Internet of Things, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, data analytics, big data analytics. So there are so many things which are critical for business organizations to assess whether they are required or not, when we have to migrate to such technologies. So assessment of the system is very important. When we need upgradation, when we need maintenance, when we need transition to a new technology, that again is a part of audit, right? And one more thing, like to keep update with competition and enhancing ever-changing dynamic environment. Like our competitors are also following latest trends and practices around us. So what we need is we need to have a quick check on how well we are doing, and we need to have a comparative analysis. And based on that, we may have a very serious situation. Like our systems are not delivering the adequate performance. Now there are two options available. Either we have to change and move to a new system or upgrade with a new system, or we can continue with the existing system, but we need to do re-engineering. Why re-engineering? Because re-engineering is restructuring. We need to restructure our existing system. But why we need that? Because many times it may be very costly to change the system or replace the system, right? And you might have already done huge investments. So for that, you need to assess what changes are required. Are they doable if we restructure our existing system? And what would be the cost involved, and what would be the benefits? And then you can compare it with the cost and benefits of the change replacement, or if we go for a new system, and then you can take up a call. But this is not an easy process. An auditor, an expert is required to have that assessment, then comparison, and then finally recommending what's the right thing. So you would see that IS audit directly or indirectly has many facets, many dimensions, many perspectives. You can be a consultant, you can be an auditor, or you can be a person who can be part of the change implementer or implementing a new technology. And finally, to achieve transparency in business operations and derive accountability. From a regulatory body's perspective, from perspective of stakeholders, I think it's very important to understand how organizations are performing. And every now and then when we see various different kind of financial frauds or cyber frauds, cyber security frauds, need of transparency in the operation and the system becomes even more evident. So we need auditing process which can give us more clarity on how organizations are working and how they're delivering the results, right? Whether they are in line with business objectives, whether they are following all of business policies, controls as recommended by the information security policy. So that's why we have audit. And I hope now you got a clarity, okay, why we are doing audit. Perhaps most of you already might be having clarity, but there are so many dimensions which you may ignore at times, right? And for every slide, I have mentioned the source also, so that you can go and have a detailed study for further resources related to that particular aspect. Now, as I told you, auditing has a broader objective, right? And there are so many parameters. We talk about hardware, software, performance, compliances, operations, financial assurance, whatnot. There are so many things, right? And risk assessment, risk control, setting up information systems and all. There are so many practices. But the cybersecurity is becoming a serious challenge for every organization. And why it is serious challenge? Because the impact these cyber threats can have can be catastrophic, right? And if you go by the latest statistics, India is among the top 5 nations in the whole world in terms of number of cyber attacks, right? So India has huge exposure because we have a lot of important, critical, sensitive data, resources, human resources, and sensitive information carried by all these human resources, right? So it appears as a huge opportunity for all the hackers, fraudsters, and that's why India is among the top 5 nations where you have highest amount of cyber attacks, right? Now, what are these cyber threats and why these attacks happen? Because let me tell you one thing, I think Hemang sir mentioned about the vulnerability. Vulnerability is the weakness and perhaps you can say the gap in the security of any system. And let me tell you one thing. We mostly feel that let's have a very strong system, secure system, and then we are safe. Let me tell you, this is a big myth. You may have a strong server, but still you are not safe, right? It's like that you have a very good car, but if you are not a good driver, then there is no significance of having a good car. Okay, same way, if you have a strong server, good server, but you are not using it in a proper way, then that's a stupidity. You're vulnerable to all sorts of attacks. Nobody can save you, right? With this, I think it's very important for us to understand what are these different kind of cyber threats, right? First category is malware attacks, where you have malicious programs, viruses, worms, trojans, spyware, adware, right? And various different kind of viruses. These are some different categories. You can go and explore it further. The idea is a program is there which is getting into your system by many means. It could be when you're browsing the internet, or when you're putting a pen drive in your system, when you're running a DVD, CD in your system, or when you're sharing your laptop with somebody else, when you're connected to public Wi-Fi. There can be so many ways in which your system may get infected by a virus or a malicious program or malware program. So it's very important for an individual to be aware of how to use the system. And again, I said, if you are using your system in a proper way, then you are relatively safer than when you are not using it in a proper way. So you should be aware of what can go wrong with your system. What are the best practices of using your system? What is your role when you're using the system? Never let your system unattended. All those things are to be taken care of. Then second is social engineering. Let's say you are an aware user, right? And you know what is the security policy, you know how to use the system in a proper way, you are having understanding of every parameter, every rule of acceptable usage policy laid by your organization. But you are a very, what do you say, lucrative opportunity for a hacker. Let's say you're a manager of a bank, or you are a vice president of a leading organization. You might have very sensitive data, which would be highly valuable for any organization, right? You know, a single tweet or a leak of information can lead to viral news, and then it may affect financials and stocks of any organization. So social engineering is when there is a prime target, but is a very secure target, or perhaps a person who is hardly having any weakness directly. So what is tried by hackers is they create a trap. They create a trap by following that person, by doing surveillance about the movement, routine of that individual, and then they create a trap. They build a team and they try to trap that person by identifying gaps in his routine. When that person is having a free time, leisure time, when most of the time means security personnel are not around him, he is available in a public place. So they identify those opportunities, and out of those, they figure out those opportunity where you are, that prime target is using the system in a public place. So they create a scenario, maybe a false storyline, where they influence the person, gain the trust of that person, and steal the information, or maybe put a monitoring program like Trojan in the system of that person. So please be very careful when you are in a public public places. Nothing happen all of a sudden, right? Everything has a cause. If there is a effect, there's a cause. If somebody is trying to influence you, definitely there's a reason, there's a purpose behind it, right? You don't get all these kind of incidents every now and then. So social engineering is a attempt of trapping you by direct or indirect attempts, like creating a scenario or storyline around you, or maybe trapping you on social media by chatting or sending you phishing mails, or maybe a voice call may gain your confidence and trust, and then they may try to steal data or some financial information from you. Or maybe piggybacking. They may pose as if a maintenance guy or security guy or a cleaner or something like that, and then they steal some data. Because by piggybacking, like they will show off as if you are a maintenance guy who has came for the maintenance, and they may capture some sensitive details and data, or maybe devices from your house or your organization, and they may take pictures of the kind of hardware and software you are using, so that they can exploit their weaknesses and can attack your system. Then there is another category called man-in-middle attack, wherein idea is to intercept the communication. When you're communicating with somebody, they will come in between and they will try to get the information. So be careful about the public places. Don't discuss sensitive things in public places, right? And of course, don't discuss sensitive things in a place you are not aware of, right? For example, you know your office, you know your table and everything. So you know there is no recording device or things like that around. So be careful of all these things, right? And then people may have kind of interception of your network. Like when you are communicating using Wi-Fi and all, they may have some screening, scanning, and recording devices which may capture the network traffic, and they may study and analyze it. And if it is not encrypted, your data may be exposed. Then there are different other kind of attacks, like your denial of service attack, where idea is to disrupt your service. If they are not able to get any critical information, they will try to damage your system, right? Like the competitors during peak sales, you may have e-commerce vendors who face these kind of attacks, because the competitors have paid some agencies or hackers to disrupt some e-commerce engines, so that during that peak demand, if one site is not available, you will definitely migrate to the next one. So that way, denial of service can be a serious attack on your business operations, where idea is to disrupt the availability of service. So the intended true user or the expected user should not get the service he's looking for. Finally, the injection, it's like a more sophisticated attack. Idea is to understand how application is working. Like you send a request, then your request goes and data comes. So they will study your application, will identify the gaps in that, like SQL injection or the code, if you haven't written a secure code, or they will have a remote connection through OS commands and the terminals, logins. Or if you're doing data analysis, like you're extracting data from one service to another and sending to another service, right? Or you are extracting data from your one application, accounting application, and then you are putting sales application, and then you are putting in accounting application, and you're not taking care of the encryption of data during this migration or entry. Then they may put an injection or a script software which will record all your sensitive data and transaction, and your data may get exposed. One more thing, like many times I've seen CA members, when they are facing problems with their laptops or the machines, they go for remote maintenance services, like they share their screens and their resources, login and password to the vendors. And that's big exposure. And this should be avoided. Why? Because it is directly giving access to those people, and they can access your confidential data, all client data, and all other reports and financial records that are there in your system. So you might be wondering what to do now. So in that case, what can happen is you can ask your executive, like your person in the office team, to have a kind of team session or Zoom session with that person, and ask that person to guide, and you do the things on your own and understand why those things are happening. So that one thing, again, if there is a problem, you don't have to call that guy again. Second, you are knowing what changes are happening and what activities have been done, and you can record all the steps that are being done. So you are monitoring exactly what changes are happening in the system. So that's one good practice that can be followed, and that would really make your system more robust and can save a lot more maintenance time that may be required in future. So there are so many best practices that you can follow, and as a chartered accountant, you should follow these things. Why? Because you are among the top 3 prime targets for hackers. Means chartered accountants, lawyers, and doctors, the medical practitioners. These are the 3 prime targets, and the 4th category is the senior citizen. These are the 4 prime targets for cyber attackers or cyber security hackers. So please be very careful. Try to follow some basic things so that you are having more clarity on how to use the system and your system is more secure. So I hope now you understand why cybersecurity is important. Now let's talk about cybersecurity frameworks, right? The first one in the list is NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It's basically supported by US government, and it's a framework which was conceptualized and designed and implemented during the era of Obama's leadership, because it was observed that under the government, there were so many sectors like critical infrastructure, transportation, railways, and many more industries, medical. They were facing a lot of cybersecurity attacks. So there was a need. They realized that we need to have a standard set of practice so that all the operations and all the ministries can have a clear guideline on and standard guideline on how to secure their infrastructure. So just imagine this whole framework has a history, why it has been prepared. And now just imagine the kind of people, specialists would be involved in building such framework. So in simple words, it's not complicated. It's very easy. It's 5-step process. First step is identify. Second is protect, then detect, then respond and recover. These are 5 stages. And every stage has its own importance, right? And every stage comes into picture or execution based on the event, right? And it totally depends on the situation. Like you are one who's setting up a new department and new system. So you will start with identify. But let's say the department is already there, and you just have to look for recent attacks that are happening. So you have to only focus on the detect, right? And maybe respond. But if the system is down, you have to focus on recovery. So in simple ways, these simple words can give you clarity on why they are doing it. We must identify the critical areas. We must protect them with proper controls. Then if there is any incident, we should detect, and then we should respond so that in future, those incident doesn't happen. And finally, if there is a damage, let's recover from those damages. But now, how all this thing happen basically? So let me give you a more detailed view of that. So you can see in identify, further objective is manage cybersecurity risk to system, asset, data, and capabilities. So in identifying, our focus would be on asset management, business environment, governance, risk assessment, risk management strategy, supply chain risk management. So this will cover broadly the all operations that are happening in your organization, and study them, observe them, monitor them, and identify what are the risks, what kind of security they need, what kind of control practices they need. Identify that. Once you identify all those things, then you have to implement adequate security measures, adequate controls. For that, you need to have some risk assessment. And based on that risk assessment, you will define the controls. So objective would be protection, and it would focus on safeguarding to ensure delivery of critical infrastructure services like confidentiality, integrity, and availability should be ensured. Whenever a government executive is looking for some kind of services, it should be available. Whenever a citizen is looking for some government services, it should be available. So there are detailed steps involved in that, like means how we can protect. First is we need to have a identity management and access control. Every individual must have a unique ID to access or connect to the system, and there should be proper access controls with clear distinction between authentication and authorization. Authentication means we must verify whether the person is the right person or not. Authorization means whether he is allowed to do only those tasks that are part of his roles and responsibilities. So these are two advanced level of practices that should be focused when you are defining access control: authentication and authorization. Okay. Then awareness and training. Training the people on what are the best practices, what are the things, do's and don'ts, what are the things you should focus on. Then data security, how to protect data. Like every data element may have different level of significance. One would be top secret, one would be a public information. So what kind of security practices are required, right? You must define that. Adequate control should be there. Then information protection processes and procedures. You must define the processes, and you must take into consideration the compliance and all other requirements. And regular maintenance practices should be defined, because when maintenance is required, somebody has to come and repair things, but that may lead to an exposure. So you must define a maintenance plan where your internal team will be focused on maintaining the system. And finally, protective technology means you must have advanced measures, for safeguarding your system from various perspectives, like physical security, logical security, network security, environmental security, right? All those things should be covered. So you would see that it's an extensive framework with all sorts of things covered, so that there is no gap left. So once protection framework is defined, all controls are defined, then comes your detection part, where you are intrusion prevention and detection system, firewalls, all those programs would be running. Security operations center would be having continuous monitoring, right? 24/7, right? And there would be other agencies also who are having continuous monitoring on all that is happening on government related systems, information systems. So idea is to focus on anomalies, exceptions, all the things, incidents which are deviating from the trend, what is expected. Out of that, whatever is happening, you should highlight that and immediately investigate. Continuous monitoring around the clock should be there. And you should regularly update your detection processes and continuously review logs and upgrade your systems. Then respond is basically a kind of response action which has to be done if there's an incident. So you must have an action plan defined, incident response plan. And then based on the incident, type of incident, you should immediately respond. It could be like stopping that particular service if it is a serious incident. But if it is a minor incident, you can, investigate the IP address and all, and then you can put it in the block list or other things if it is a new attempt of denial of service or some other kind of security attack. So if it is a minor incident, you just have to quickly follow your action plan and update the system. But if it is a new threat or a new incident, you may have to do analysis and advance, investigation. And you need to look for what are the best practices so that these things doesn't happen in future. So you may have to recommend some upgradation, and or new controls need to be defined and practices need to be defined, like end-to-end encryption or many more advanced practices where no data during storage, transition, or processing should be accessible by unauthorized parties. So you need to update your incident response plan, or maybe new controls need to be integrated if it is a new threat. Finally, if there is a catastrophic attack and your system is down beyond your response time, so you need to initiate recovery by following up with your business continuity team and your backups that are available. You have to restore your system, right? So that your services can go undisrupted. So you can see what is the objective behind this NIST framework, right? So this is their cybersecurity framework, which has 5 dimensions. And now you would be wondering how to implement it. I will give you detailed guideline at the end. Let's quickly cover other framework as well. Now we'll talk about ISO 27000. So ISO 27001 is basically information security certification. So have a clear understanding here. you may have a lot of myths and doubts about ISO 27001 and ISO 27002. And in the previous session, Hemang sir mentioned that if you are looking for some standard security practices, or if there is a requirement from regulatory body, you can go for ISO 27001 certification. And you can do some courses also where you can be a certified auditor for ISO 27001. Now, what is the certification and why it is called certification? Well, let me tell you one thing. ISO 27001 is basically a set of practices. You can see there are 14 domains. So there are 14 activities, and they have defined checklists for these 14 activities. And these checklists would be used to review and check your system's effectiveness in terms of information security. And if your system follow these practices and your assessment gives that, oh, all these practices are implemented as per the specification, so you would be awarded ISO 27001 certification. So it means that it's a standard for certification. And you can be an auditor who can conduct this audit and can give a certification or perhaps a report that this company abide by all the 14 domains of ISO 27001. Okay, so it's a certification standard. Then there is another standard, ISO 27002. Now, what is 27002? It's basically a implementation standard. So let's say you are an organization who wants to implement ISO 27001. Or it means who wants to go for certification. Let's say you are an organization and there's a mandatory requirement that you should be ISO 27001 certified. First of all, you have to prepare yourself, because if you will not prepare yourself, you will be failing and you will not get the certification. So to prepare yourself, you have to implement security practices. How you will implement? You have to have some standard set of practices defined. So you need to set up ISMS, as mentioned by Hemang sir also, Information Security Management System. A system for maintaining the security has to be defined. And that system has 14 domains, as you can see here. But how to implement, how to design system, how to implement control, what kind of controls, how to implement physical security, logical security, all detailed guidelines are there in ISO 27002. So if you want to implement security, go for ISO 27002 first. Once you implement the security as per the standard, then you can go for the certification ISO 27001. Right? So it means that there are opportunities available as a consultant for implementing security practices. Second, as an auditor, if you are ISO lead auditor, then you can test organizations effectiveness, whether they are to be certified for ISO 27001 or not. Right. So these are the broader area. If you look at these domains, it can give you an understanding on, yes, it covers most of the aspects. First thing, from top management's perspective, you must have all the policies, security policies defined. Second is human resource security, means security of the personals. They must have proper set of practices defined on how we can secure their data, their operations, and then access controls. In terms of physical and environmental and logical also. Every user should be given a ID, badges, or biometric security parameters. And then access control should be defined based on the criticality of the asset. Like if it is high and sensitive, like data center, biometric control should be there. But if it is a public area, campus area, or reception area, you may have less controls, right? And if it is a operation center, then you may have advanced controls again, like biometrics. For physical and environmental, you must have suitable controls based on the requirements. Operation security center, where you will have regular monitoring. Organization information security, where you will define which information assets are there, labeling of them, and who should access what, and all those things. Asset management, location, where to store what asset, and who should be accessible, who's the owner, defining roles, responsibilities, all those things come there. Cryptography is for all the digital data, whether the data is at rest, movement, or processing. It should be in encrypted state, coded form, so that if somebody gets access accidentally, the data should not get leaked and that person should not understand the data. And then how to means like you know that there are systems, the development, maintenance, acquisition, all these are different activities, and they may get exposed, and the system may get exposed, or some data may get leaked. So security of all those operations should be there. Supplier relation, whenever you are communicating with the vendors or other suppliers, that interaction, how data is getting exchanged, all those communication should be secured. Then communication security, how data is traveling from your internal network to the outside world, internet, that should be checked, and there should be proper network security. Business continuity management, if your system is down, you must be able to continue your critical operations. Then all compliance requirement related to, say, IT Act, or maybe income tax, GST, all other like business continuity and whatnot. Finally, information security incident management. If there's an incident, how to address that. So you can see ISO 27000 has a different way of presenting things, but it also covers all the things. So you can see it gives you more detailed understanding on how we can secure an organization. Whereas if you look at NIST, it clearly gives a top view where a government wants standard operations across all government departments. So you can see the difference in the frameworks. This looks like a global standard, can be applied everywhere, whereas that looks like more of a standard developed with a perspective of a government system and government agencies and different kind of departments, different kind of critical infrastructure that they have. So, but again, overall objective is the same: protection, safeguarding of assets. Then there is another framework by CIS, Center of Internet Security. So they have basically 18-step process. Again, it's more of a detailed step-by-step process. It basically talks about more from operational aspects. Like if you want to look at the security from IT perspective, okay, how we are doing our IT operations. Have we picked up all the vulnerabilities? Have we covered all the malware defense? Means it's more of a detailed step-by-step activity guide where you can have a secure information security practices, right? Having said that, let me tell you one thing. There are so many frameworks, and you can take inputs from different frameworks. At the end of the day, what matters is your organization's assets should be safeguarded, right? So there would be information groups, implementation groups in your organization. There may be 5 departments in your organization. So you can say that there are 5 implementation groups, right? So let's say there are, if you see, there are 3, they have divided the whole implementation into 3 groups, and they have given like under inventory and control of enterprise asset, they have defined 5 set of practices. And you may study and review from different perspectives whether they are effective or not. And you can prepare your report, like out of 5, 2 are doing good and 4 are satisfactory and things like that. So you can have measurement and control across various parameters like assets, vulnerability management, malwares, network devices, application security, data recovery, log management, account management. So all these are different IT security practices which should be there in any organization. So this helps you in covering all the security requirements in totality, right? So there are so many frameworks, right? So if you talk about PCI DSS is also there. You have IT Act, right? If you talk about any is there any cybersecurity framework in India? So, well, let me tell you one thing. We have IT Act, which gives all the necessary inputs which should be there for any cybersecurity system or framework. So we need to look at that, and we need to identify the requirements of security, like your data privacy, data security, and who all comes into that requirement. Everything is there in IT Act, right? So we can refer to that if we are looking for any inputs regarding information security practices. And data privacy is really a very, very critical requirement, because the client data or the customer data that you are having, if it get exposed, intentionally or unintentionally, it will lead to serious exposure, and then the accountability is yours, and you have to make sure that the data is safeguarded and it never get leaked. And if gets leaked through your systems, you may have to face serious legal issues, right? And so it's really very critical for everybody to understand that how we carry the data in our system is a very sensitive thing. So we must follow best practices to secure our systems. Now, let's have a quick understanding on how to implement. We talked about cybersecurity frameworks, how to implement it. So for every cybersecurity framework, there are implementation guidelines, right? So we need to have that manual with us, and then we can follow those things step by step. So let me just quickly share my another screen to give you an idea on how this NIST framework works and what all has happened in this framework, right? Just a second. Let me just take you to that interface. Okay, just a second. Let me share my screen. I'll share the URL also so that you can refer that. Perhaps I've shared a URL on almost every slide, so you can refer to those resources. I hope the screen is visible. Let me just quickly see that. Okay, yeah, it's visible, right? So this is based. Yeah, thank you. So you can see that it's basically the website of NIST, nist.gov, US-based agency. And if you want to see the authenticity and integrity, like whether we are connected to the right website or not, wrong, it may be a wrong way or a fake website also, you can go to this lock on the left side and you can go to this connection is secure, and you can go and click on this certificate is valid. Now, this is the digital certificate of this particular server to which we are connected. And the purpose of digital certificate is to tell us who we are connected to, right? So we can see that it is star.nist.gov. So National Institute of Standard and Technology, which is a US body, and it is a domain, means the server we are connected to is a domain hosted for that organization. Let's say a hacker creates a mirror website, similar kind of website, but they cannot copy this certificate. Though they can have their own digital certificate, but it would be issued to some other domain, not to this domain. So this is the simplest way of identifying whether we are connected to the right server, right machine or not, by looking at the digital certificate, because we cannot copy a digital certificate of anybody else, right? Because the digital certificate is issued by a certifying authority, and there is a public key infrastructure. There is a private key and there is a public key. So private key is issued to the public key is issued to the applicant to whom they are issuing digital certificate, and private key is maintained by the agency so that they can always have a verification and validation and check of that certificate, right? If somebody else tampers or try to come for this certificate, they will identify that this is not the valid certificate, right? Now, this PKI, public key infrastructure, is used in many ways. If we talk about digital signature, the concept is totally different. The person owns the private key, which is the digital signature, and the certification authority has the public key. So there are different ways in which this private key, public key is used. Totally depends on the context, right? One is digital signature, one is digital certificate, one is key exchange. When we connect to website, if you see in this digital certificate, if you go to details, you will see one information called public key, right? Yeah, so this is the public key. If you click on this public key, you will get the data. Oh, just a second. Yeah, so if I click on this, so this is the data. So what this public key is, this is the public key of which server? The server of NIST. Why they have given public key? Because through this public key, we can send our secure key to the server, and we can communicate in a secure way. So there are so many security protocols which are happening in the back end, which are safeguarding our system, right? This is how we can check whether we are connected to the right website or not. Now, let me tell you about this website. This gives you detailed understanding on what this framework is and how to implement this framework. If you click on this plus button here on the framework, you will see version, the latest version of the framework and the implementation guide. So once you will get the PDF file where you can have a lot of documentation related to this. Let me just show you what this PDF file looks like. So you can see framework for improving critical infrastructure, cyber security, right? So version 1.1. So they are giving you detailed documentation on how this framework has been defined, what is the thought process, how it has been created, what it all covers. All those things are there. Glossary and detailed definition of every aspect, appendix and details are there, right? Guidelines are there. Everything is there. So you can read it out and you can understand the details on how to implement it. But from a checklist perspective, if you want to study this, let me show you. There's an Excel sheet available. If you click on this, you will get the Excel sheet. Let me share that, show you that Excel sheet also. Just a second. Where it basically highlights the detailed step-by-step execution plan on how we can implement NIST framework for our organization, right? So we know that there are operations like identity, right? Identify. So this first function is blue function, which is basically, let me show you the identify operation, identify step. And then after that, the second step, it's a detailed list, which was your what? After identification is protection, then detection, then response, then recover. So all these stages are there, right? So you can understand this. Second is the category. Under identify, first was asset management, right? So under identity category ID, there is asset management, AM. So they have given coding, right? So under identity asset management, first activity to be done is physical devices and systems within the organizations are inventoried. Means you have to identify and prepare inventory of all the physical devices and systems. So this is the first practice area which you have to do in this step. Second practice area, software platform. Third, communication and data flow, all those things. So asset management is done, then business environment. All the practice areas are there, right? And on the right side, they have shown how this particular activity of cybersecurity is related to other frameworks. Let's say CIS, as I mentioned, then COVID-5, ISA 62443, ISO 27000, NIST SP. So there are other popular frameworks. How this activity is related to that. Many times what happened, let's say you started following NIST for your security, cyber security. But on another day, you are partnering with a firm, and firm says that we will only merge with you or collaborate with you if you have ISO 27001 certification. Now you would say that, listen here, we have NIST cybersecurity standard framework, and it has mapping with ISO 27001. So you can show that though you have implemented NIST, you still have coverage of ISO. So you can show that you have covered this ISO 27000 here. You can show the mapping, and if there is any gap, anything which is left out, you can pick that particular thing and you can say that, okay, now we are compliant with ISO, and you can get ISO certification with the minimum changes. Otherwise, you would be wondering, many times people get stuck up like, oh, we are using this one, and now how to get this another certification? Do we have to invest so much of amount? And you may get in trap with some consultant who may say, sir, I'll get you the certification at low cost. But you didn't understood that you already might have 99% of the certification. Preparedness means you're already prepared 99% for that certification. The only one or two things which are left out are to be implemented. So this is how you should understand the systems, frameworks, and their importance. So this kind of understanding will help you in becoming a better consultant and looking for all sorts of opportunities. You can improve your own system. You can guide others also, right? So this is how you should look at it. And every framework has similar kind of implementation guidelines. Every framework will have these kind of Excel sheet where you can see what they are doing, how to implement, and how they are mapped to other standards. This clearly shows the kind of research work, extensive work and research done by the experts. So they have made a framework in a way which is easily flexible, in a flexible way, can be integrated across different domains, right? So this is a huge repository, and I hope this would be helpful for all of you. So let me take you back to that interface again, right? So this website is a very useful resource if you really want to explore, practice, and learn about cybersecurity, right? And at the same time, you can map or see what all other frameworks are there and how we can map that our framework with this framework with other frameworks. And this will give you more clarity on how to handle corporate assignments and how to deliver consultancy if somebody is asking you about cybersecurity, right? And one more important thing, how effective this framework is and what is the usage so far. So there's an infographic which can give you understanding about this framework more, like it's a framework and impacts and outcomes. So it's an interesting statistics. So they have been collaborating with so many agencies, and they have done 35,100 plus workshops, 11,100 plus webcasts and webinars. Then total downloads, 1.5 million downloads, right? This framework, policy framework, this framework and related Excel sheet, and 800 plus responses and comments, like queries and maybe some suggestions. Then downloaded to 185 countries. So just imagine it's a globally used framework. And there are success stories also, like shared by agencies who have felt happy and useful, means successful after using these resources. And they have 10 framework profiles also, how they have been using in their government agencies. Then there are many more statistics, right? 48 critical infrastructures they have been covering in the US across 16 sectors. So that's all. These are some of the statistics that highlight how useful this framework is, right? Finally, let me quickly take you to one more slide, which is part of our discussion today. Just a second. So, yeah. So there are so many agencies, and I was just looking for some data on a public domain to give you some real life perspective also, how companies are doing cybersecurity. We talked about the standards and frameworks. So I picked this diagram from this website, Vodafone website, and this is basically their operational model, how they operate cybersecurity and how they handle cybersecurity in their organization. So you can see they have these set of practices like identify, protect, detect, and response and recover. So you just see this is directly in line with what NIST says, right? And then they have all those practices available. I have this link available, so you can in the bottom as a source, you can visit that and you can go and check in detail what their operational model is and how they operate and how they have implemented this framework like NIST. It is clearly visible that they have used NIST, right? So, so that clearly highlights what is the importance of frameworks and best practices all over the world. So leading organizations and many organizations are using this. So the URL that I mentioned in the bottom of this Vodafone, this is the URL, Vodafone operating model for cybersecurity. And they have discussed in detail how they're doing it. So they have their teams all over the world, right? And then they are defining on how they implement it, how they manage it. So a lot of resources available is being available online, how they do governance, how they do risk assessment management, everything is available. I think these kind of documentations can be a great source of inspiration and understanding on how to take security for any organization and how to implement security systems, security controls, and how to review it. And in case of consultancy assignment, how to approach such practices so that you can have quality services to be delivered to your clients, your users, right? And so that's all from my side. So thank you to all of you for your patience listening, and I hope I have added some value to your knowledge, or maybe some new knowledge to your understanding, or perhaps a clarity in understanding, and you are in a position now to pick up this auditing and cybersecurity further, and you can practice with the resources that I and Hemang sir shared, right? So that's all from my side. This was the outline that we discussed. I hope you got a clarity. Over to you, Manish, in case there are any questions, queries.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is one query. How to be 27001 consultant?
Okay, all right. So if you want to be a consultant, I think Hemang sir also mentioned there are training courses exclusively designed for ISO 27001 certification. Why? Because it's a globally recognized standard, and most regulations asked for, regulatory bodies ask for such standard. So what you can do is you can go for a training course and can become ISA 27001 lead auditor. There's a name for that, ISO 27001 lead auditor. Hemang sir also mentioned, go for this training and then there will be exam assessment and you will get the certification. Once you are certified, then you can conduct such audits and you can provide consultancy services in preparing organization for certification. So there is a lot of opportunity available. So you simply join any training course for ISA 27001 lead auditor. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Vinayji, for the in-depth deliberation on the topic, and to deliberate in such a simple way. Like you have said, if you have a good car, but there is no good driving skill, then there is no significance of good car.
Right.
And I hope the members who joined the webinar today really gain from your deliberation. Now, with this, we come to an end of this very informative webinar, and believe that all the participants must have enjoyed this learning experience to the best. And extend the sincere thanks to all the guest speakers and the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board of the ICI for organizing this very time-relevant webinar for the benefit of all the members. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you all, and thank you, ICI.
Okay, thank you.